Welcome back, traveler! No, I don't know the rest of this.
To legendary lore!
Yeah.
Today we're going to be going over the next half of the legendary creatures from Dominaria United. We're going to start off with Moira. Moira is actually one of my favorite characters to come out in recent years, because obviously characters like Karn and Ugin, they're a bit more established. But here we have Moira, Scholar of Antiquities. She's basically the leader of the Yavimaya elves, and she knows all about the legendary lore. To the point where in the story she sees Joda and is like, "Oh my gosh, you're Joda. That's so cool. Hi." And then when later on when she's actually with everybody else, she's like, "Teferi, Jaya." It's like, "It's so nice to meet all of you. Karn, you're so much shinier in person."
Wow. So she could just take your job.
Yeah, essentially. Or I could just take hers. So Moira is an Erborg spirit. Moira is a powerful necromancer, and she basically is interesting because she went from being a antagonistic spirit, apparently, in the past. This is her first appearance.
Okay.
But she went from that to basically wanting to help newly deceased spirits to adjust to their lives as undead, which has kind of been her entire thing.
That's nice.
We're gonna get to find out more about her enemy in a few of these. So then we have Naile, who was she's an elf. She's a blue-green elf. She can fly. And she also would work around Yavimaya. She was a Yavimaya elf. Yavimaya is known for being having red and blue attached to it as colors.
Spicy and mild.
That's called a callback. Did it need to be called back to? Nope.
Rude.
So, Naile eventually discovers the way that she can fly by finding these strange creatures in the sky, and she just rides them. They're basically like jellyfish things. It's weird. Then we have Najal, the Storm Runner. Najal is an Efreet. Efreets are from Rabaya, which is really interesting because the idea is that Rabaya is considered to have been an impossible plane for us to go back to.
Really?
Yes, because it's entirely based off 1001 Nights. Yes. And so Rabaya itself being referenced as a plane is interesting because it also is, just with this character of Najal, makes it so that there's actually a way for us to visit Rabaya without having to... What?
I'm just listening.
Okay. There's a way for us to basically get stuff from Rabaya without us actually having to go there for a set. And the basic idea is that Najal is so fast that he flashed his way essentially through the blind eternities into Dominaria, which would be impossible for most cases, but the idea is that means there's probably like a closeness or like an overlap between the two planes, allowing that to actually happen. It's weird, but it's that's really the main interesting thing about Najal.
I don't really understand the plane's physics.
That makes sense. Then we have Namata. Namata is a giant Magnagoth tree folk, and it's over 3,000 feet tall, so it's absolutely massive.
That's cool.
Yeah?
Yeah. Trees? I like trees.
I know you do, Carol.
Remember the redwoods?
I do, Carol.
Those were tall trees.
Yep. So essentially, this giant tree was taking care of Rith, who was awakened recently. Rith is a green, red, white dragon, giant dragon.
Okay.
Yeah, not as giant as the tree, but you get the idea.
No, okay, yeah, sure.
Then we have Queen Alanal.
Whoa.
Of Rudak, or Rudash.
Okay, keep talking.
Okay, so essentially her thing is that she's...
I like the flowers.
That's good, Carol.
The flowers are pretty.
Yes, that's their idea.
Yeah.
Basically, she was around back when the first Phyrexians happened, like the first Phyrexian invasion. So this new one, she's like, okay, let's take him down. She's pretty much ready for it just immediately.
Oh.
And that's her entire deal. We then have Radha. Radha is another warlord. She is she's a half elf, but she's considered to be the rightful heir to Keld. And so she's the one who basically is like leading the new coalition in a very large capacity. Her and Denitha are the two of the main people.
She's a good guy?
Yes.
Okay.
The coalition are good guys. The Phyrexians are the bad guys.
But you also said warlord, so it's like...
Well, yeah, warlord. Like, if you look at the majority of things in the past, they were warlords. Like, old texts referring to kings and such are more referring to warlords.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're not warmongers. Like a warmonger would be somebody who like feeds off of war. Anyways, we have Raf Capuchin. Raf is the brother to Denitha, and he is basically always looking for adventure. He's like if Urte were a good kid. He's really good with magic, and he's on the Weatherlight and everything, and that's his entire shtick.
He's good, and he's on the Weatherlight.
Yes, that's his whole thing, and he is basically he's got a sense of humor kind of thing.
Oh.
Then we have Radic of Erborg. This is the guy I was talking about that is not friends with Moira. So Radic basically knew about Dralnu, Nevinrul, Josu Vest. These are all famous Lich Lords, and Radic wants to be the next one. He wants to be the next big Lich Lord. He's already a Lich.
What does that mean?
What does a Lich mean?
Yeah.
A Lich is an undead zombie that has its faculties. So like a normal zombie is like, but a Lich Lord is one that is essentially indestructible and immortal as a result of being able to retain both the soul and the corpse together.
Okay.
But he hates Moira because all of the fresh souls that he wants to enslave, she keeps freeing them. And yeah.
See the conflict there.
Yeah. Now we've gone to Rith, the daughter of Palladia Mors, also known as the liberated primeval. This is very interesting because there was not really confirmation that Palladia Mors, who is a sister of Nicol Bolas, is connected in any way to Rith, which also means that most likely the other dragons, the other primeval dragons, are in some way connected to the original Elder Dragons as well. All of this is pretty cool. Now, with that said,
it's pretty cool, Rick.
Thank you, Morty. And so as we keep going, we essentially see that Daragaz and a variety of other dragons back in the original invasion, they wound up coming back to life and causing all kinds of havoc.
The dragons?
Yes. Because essentially there was a whole deal in the original Apocalypse story in which Daragaz, Croesus, Rith, Treva, and I want to say the Esper one. Chromium. No, Chromium's the actual one. Anyways, these 5 dragons, they come back for like 10 pages out of nowhere. Daragaz finds out that they're all too strong as long as he's alive. So he terminates himself by throwing himself into a volcano. Oh. And then he dies. But Daragaz's whole deal is that he keeps getting resurrected as an egg. So, yeah. We actually have a Daragaz in Alchemy. A new card got printed, which was interesting. So basically, all this happens, and now Rith is back, and she is basically trying to reunite with Daragaz. And it's unknown what their plans are, but it seems like it's going to be another Rising of Dragons. We're basically getting a lot of seeds put throughout this whole set. That other than the Phyrexians, there's all these other stories that are starting up. You have the whole thing with Jared and Dihada. You have this story with the dragons. You have Radic trying to become a new Lich Lord. You have Braids becoming the new leader of the Cabal. You have a bunch of things like that happening all throughout the entirety of the set to kind of just set it up because this has so much story in it. Now, with that said, we also have Rivaz. Rivaz is a Viashino, and they're called the Zerium. And that's like the ancestors they had. And basically, Rivaz is the latest in the long line of the Claws, and it wants to like lead the dragons and the Viashino to victory. Then we got the Rona. Rona is Shaldred's faithful. What's wrong? You having some trouble? Did you catch my bit? So Rona essentially is this person that sought out forbidden lore and became an acolyte of Gix. Gix is a Phyrexian demon from the old times.
Okay.
And essentially, once Shaldred showed up and she was like, oh wow, a real Phyrexian and you're alive. And Shaldred's like, yeah, I am. And so Shaldred basically made Rona her right hand without completing her, which is an interesting aspect of it. Then we have Raznacht, the heir of Ragach. Ragach.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, Ragach. So,
thank you.
Raznacht is basically a kobold. Kobolds are not very common, but they do all live in the Kerr Ridges. That's basically all where they are. And the whole idea is that he wants to kill Prosh.
Of course.
The Jund Dragon.
I know who Prosh is.
You know who Prosh?
I know who Prosh is.
Okay.
He's the commander.
That is correct.
Of my red, black, green.
You got there. So, next up we have Relic Mons, who is the Warren Chief. He's a red-green goblin. And he's descended from Relic Mons. You may notice there's a lot of descendants here. And it really is that's the main idea they were trying to go for this set was
really? Sorry, no, I'm serious. Like, you're right, there are a lot of descendants, and I didn't even think about it until you said it. There's a lot.
Yes.
And it's on purpose.
Yes.
Okay.
Runeveld Mountains, where that guy lives, and they basically were one of the first ones to join the coalition because they were really happy to have the opportunity. Then we have Shani, the Sleeper Scourge. Sleeper. The Sleeper Agents, which are Phyrexians that look like normal people, but then when you find out they're Phyrexians or they get what they want, their face splits open and then they kill you.
Like a Johnny?
Yes. A Johnny Sleeper Agent.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did it.
So, basically, Shani is she's hunting the sleepers, and she goes and she kills entire towns, trying to root them out, and she's kind of insane.
Yeah.
And people aren't sure which is more dangerous, the sleeper infiltrators or her.
Wow.
On the other side of it, we have Shanna, who is a descendant of Sisse, Captain Sisse. And Sisse was the original captain of the Weatherlight, which is why Shanna was the previous captain of the Weatherlight before it was completed and then Urtze took over. So essentially, she is she has a special warding around her that stops.
Is the Weatherlight a spaceship?
Essentially, it's a flying boat.
Okay.
It's really cool. It used to be able to travel between planes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It has an entire collapsed plane of angels inside of it.
Spaceship. Okay.
Yeah, because Urza accidentally brought a bunch of Phyrexians. Accidentally, because he had just gone to Phyrexia and he was not prepared for it. He brought some Phyrexians accidentally over into Sarah's realm, which is the realm with the angels in it. And they began to corrupt all the angels and take the siphon off the angel souls and turned it into a Phyrexian stronghold. Urza fought against them, not knowing that they were going to be going what was happening. Yeah, there's a lot.
I don't approve.
And then eventually he was able to save them by putting the humans and angels that were still uncompleted onto the Weatherlight and getting them back to Dominaria, which is why there's an entire church to Sarah there. So yeah.
Okay.
Moving on, we have Sheoldred the Apocalypse. Sheoldred is a Phyrexian. She is super cool.
Harley Quinn.
Sure.
I remember seeing her.
I'm thinking she looked like Harley Quinn.
Packs.
Yeah, so essentially Sheoldred is the one. Yes.
We went to Anime Fiesta to get Pokemon cards signed, and we didn't meet her, but we saw her. She was right over there. It was Tara Strong.
That is correct.
The original Harley Quinn.
So then we have Sulkarnar. Sulkarnar is he's basically just this elemental demon. He was tainted by, you want to look at him?
Yeah.
He was tainted by the character of Dihada and basically yes. And
he kind of looks like the big tree man.
What do you mean, Carol?
Yeah, the guy, I have him in my green. Sometimes he's a commander.
Multani?
Yeah, he kind of looks like Multani.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense because Multani is a Morrow sorcerer, and Sulkarnar was a Morrow sorcerer before he was corrupted by Dihada and turned into a swamp monster.
Huh.
So good job.
Thank you.
Moving on, we have the Soul of Windgrace. Windgrace is a character from the original sets as well. He had a whole deal where he was one of the 9 Titans that fought against the original Phyrexians, and he did eventually die whenever he fought against the well, he didn't really fight against it. He was sealing the time rifts during Time Spiral Block, and he left a piece of himself behind just in case the Dominaria ever needed protection from Phyrexia once again. And it did. So then his soul suddenly showed up and started wrecking Phyrexians because he's just that hardcore.
It's kind of like Voldemort.
Sure.
The Horcruxes.
Except that instead of them being something used to maintain his existence, he uses it as a way to project a part of himself.
Well, he was able to
We've already covered Squee, and Squee was a cabin boy. That was his whole deal. Now he's immortal, and he is no longer immortal. Once he became king in the Etarian Mountains, he had the opportunity to finally figure out what was going on with him, and he chose to get rid of his immortality.
Really?
Specifically, yes. That all happened in the story Death and Salvation, and he made the decision to be killable.
And here I was thinking Squee was still immortal.
No, he became mortal so that he can only die one more time. And he is like just everybody else, but he wants to be a hero that actually has that risk, as opposed to being defined by the fact that he can't die. So then we have Sten. Sten is a Phyrexian sleeper agent hunter. He's supposed to be hunting them.
Okay.
Sure.
Are those arrows behind him?
No, they are not.
Oh, well, never mind.
Then we have Tatyova, the Steward of Tides. Is
she a mermaid?
She is technically a mermaid. She is a merfolk.
You can talk while I look at the picture.
I could, or you could just. There we go. So essentially, she worked with the elves of Yavimaya in order to know what was going on with green magic, which is why she's so like deeply tied to green and blue magic. She has been the person basically to hold back Emperor Mihail from his more brutal stances. So she's basically like a merfolk advisor. One of the funnest legendaries in this set is the Peregrine Dynamo, which is basically just a piece of Thran technology that had been...
It looks like the Robo from Amphibia.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay. So essentially this giant robot had just been buried in the dirt. It used to be one of Urza's machines. It was a repurposed Thran dynamo. And essentially what happened here is that Jorah just saw it one day yelling, "Do not be alarmed at wildlife." Like it was just stomping around yelling, "Do not be alarmed at rabbits and deer."
Do not be alarmed.
Yeah, I love it.
Do not be alarmed.
It's the best thing.
Do not be alarmed.
Yeah, so basically now...
Kind of like an angel.
Yeah.
When they tell you to not be
That's
afraid.
Right. Yep. And so essentially Jorah made him part of the team.
Oh, okay.
Then we have the Raven Man. The Raven Man was a entity that was haunting Liliana. Still is, but it was too. And essentially it was actually Limdul in disguise. And it's trying to get her to let him take over her body.
Oh! I feel like I've heard about this before.
You have?
Yeah.
Then we have Tori de Avenant.
That's uncomfortable.
The Fury Rider. Tori was born with a degenerative disease.
Oh.
Yes. And so basically she had no use of her legs by the time she was a teenager. But because of that, she trained as a cavalry officer. Yes. And so basically now she has a specially trained war horse, a custom saddle, whole bunch of stuff like that.
That's cool.
And she leads all of her people into battle. She is fearless, and she is basically an inspiration to all of them.
That's great.
It is. It's pretty cool. Then we have Turok and Rude, which is a Sky Knight. And basically his whole deal is that he wanted to be able to tame he wanted to fly.
He wanted to fly?
He wanted to fly. He basically, she was a person that worked in Kjeldor, and during the Ice Age, like her family was there, and she decided that she was going to have an Aesir, which is what the name of the things they flew on. I can remember the name. Because I was going to say an Aven, that's not right. I was going to say a Griffin, that's still not right.
Yeah.
Aesir.
No, I see why you stumbled a little bit there.
Yeah. So basically, her and her Aesir are basically just unstoppable. Also, the Aesir itself is descended from Arna Kenrud.
What does that look like?
What?
An Aesir, like what is that?
Oh, it looks like this. It's just a giant,
Oh!
It's just a giant falcon. But yeah, Turok and Rude is a descendant of Arna Kenrud, and Arna Kenrud's Aesir is the ancestor of the one it rides. So basically, the duo, just the line continued.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes. Then we have Erg.
Okay.
Spawn of Turg. It's a frog. What?
Is that a giant frogger?
So the idea is that Turg was a giant frog from back in the olden days during the Tales of the Odyssey, and it had fused with the ambassador. I believe was it fused with Ambassador Laquatus?
Yes.
So basically, the idea is that when Turg was fused, it left behind a clutch of eggs, and one of those eggs was taken by the Cabal.
How dare they?
Yes. And now Erg is all over the place, just stomping around Ataria, eating giant flies. Then we have Varric, the warped Senger. Baron Senger specifically, is from another plane entirely called the Homelands. Olgratha is the actual name of the plane. And his whole deal was that he would turn people into vampires because he felt like it. And he also ruled that entire place with the Iron Fist. It was basically the original Innistrad. But eventually, that was its own story, and the place was considered a pretty bad set in general. So they kind of started to drift away from it. And everything Senger related is now in Dominaria permanently. So this is the latest in line of vampires. And so basically, Varric is occasionally visited by bouts of clarity, and he basically uses those bouts of clarity to plan his next kill.
Oh.
Because he's basically a monster.
Wait, what does he do when he's not clear?
He kills everything inside and eats it.
Oh.
Because he's a vampire.
Okay.
So, then we have Vohar.
So when he's unclear, he's eating things, and when he's clear, he's planning how to eat things.
Yeah, he's a vampire. So.
Okay.
Next up, we have Vohar, the Medallion Desecrator.
Whoa, that's a cool card.
It is a cool card.
Look at that
It's
card.
a Phyrexian merfolk, which we don't see quite a bit.
That's fancy.
Indeed. So basically, this character wanted to take over Vidalia. They were trying to take over past Emperor Mihail II, and they led an entire, they actually tried to take over things. They led in, a coup. And the thing is, the plot was discovered, and then Vohar was banished to the abyssal lair of the Dominarian oceans. And there, it basically met an ancient Phyrexian under the sea.
Under the sea.
Yes, and the Phyrexian completed Vohar, and now he still wants to destroy Emperor Mihail. So that's his whole deal.
Yeah.
Then we have Zar Ojanin of Afrava. Zar Ojanin is a tiger person.
Really?
Yes, this is how she looks. She's a tiger person.
Oh, cool.
Yes, and she basically, she had a whole story where she was the person that was descended from Jedit Ojanin. Jedit Ojanin having an entire series of books dedicated to his exploits.
Okay.
And she basically wants to just carry on her family legacy. There's not much else to her.
Fair enough.
Then we have Zerium, the Golden Wind.
Wait, what?
It's a griffin. It's got little ram horns.
Those are horns.
Yes.
Thought it was an eye.
Nope.
I was like, oh my Atlanta.
So basically, when Zhalfir was phased out by Teferi, most griffins that hunted the savannas disappeared with Zhalfir. But Zerium was a descendant of Zuberi, who was one of the few remaining members of the species. So even this wild animal is a descendant of another legendary creature that was just a wild animal. And so basically, Zerium is proud and haughty, but it is known to spare travelers who pass through the territory, specifically hunting for poachers. So it just picks out poachers from the sky.
Like the lion.
Yeah. Then we have Zur, the Eternal Schemer. Zur is interesting because his whole deal was he was basically an insane wizard, and over time he somehow became immortal. They actually don't tell us how that happened.
I like the color.
The color palette they use from?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so yeah, it says that he is a professor at the Tellurian Academy, and he says that he wants to foster knowledge in the minds of the young.
Who doesn't?
And that he is definitely not up to anything. And Joda's like, okay, yeah, sure, maybe.
Oh, why?
So he's just watching him, making sure he doesn't do anything crazy.
Got it.
And with that, all the Planeswalkers, of course, we already know about because they were all in the main storyline, so no need to talk about Liliana, Johnny, or Jaya. Instead, we're going to go ahead and cut it off here, round it all out, and thank you guys for watching. Carol, please close us out.
Hey, you know what? We have an Instagram. It's bosswatch_gaming, and we'd love to see you there. Travel well.
Great job.